And thank you, Alex, for hitting that. And what we'll do is just I'll invite you to just engage with me for maybe a 2-minute practice, an arrival practice that allows us to land in our bodies. And I start that process by just first noticing my external environment, right? And I have my mute button off. Obviously, I don't expect any other distractions, but you never know. My daughter could come home at any moment and not heed my wife's warnings, and there might be some ruckus, but otherwise I don't expect any other interruptions. But as you notice your external environment, I'll invite you to start to bring your attention inward, right? So now maybe softening your gaze. You can keep the eyes open or closed. Those of you in the car there, I invite you to keep your eyes open. But as you keep those eyes open, I'll invite you to start to bring your attention inward and start to notice the physical sensations in your own body. And as we actually land in our own bodies, and notice your body sitting in the chair that it's in, and just allowing the physical sensation of that support to occupy the main stage of your awareness for just a breath cycle or two. And from that awareness, allowing your attention to really take in the sensations of your entire body. And noticing especially the sensations in your body as you notice your inhale and exhale. So maybe before we try to control the breath, maybe just noticing just how your body feels, and in particular, how your body feels with that rhythmic inhale and exhale, as deep or as shallow, as rapid or as slow as it might be. And then noticing your breath and your body in this moment, I'll invite us all to start deepening our breaths together. And one way we can do that is really to take, sometimes we think of as a big deep belly breath, or we just sort of bring a sense of expansion through the belly, the low back, and the side waist. And we can start to maybe measure the exhale. If you have some yoga practice, you can engage that ujjayi breath, which just means sort of measuring out your exhale a little bit, allowing your exhale to escape a little bit more slowly than your inhale came in. And if you continue to take those nice deep inhales and exhales, and maybe allow your hands to come to your heart center. Some people like to press their palms together. I like to stack my hands inward towards my heart. Some of my friends like to put a fist inside their palm. Anything that allows you to bring your attention to this area around of your heart where you might hold your intention for being here this evening. Why it is that you decided to log into this webinar tonight. And without losing the breath and that connection with your intention, also in that same place around your hands and your heart, for a moment, see if you can allow a sensation of gratitude to arise. And that can mean whatever you want it to mean. Maybe it's just remembering a time when you were feeling really grateful and thankful and what that might have felt like in your body. Or just imagining what it would feel like if you were feeling grateful in your body. And then from that place, I'll invite you just to silently acknowledge to yourself one thing in your life that you are grateful for this evening. And without losing that nice deep breath, without losing sight of your intention, and without losing any sense of connection you have to gratitude, I'll invite you to open your eyes. I'll invite you to, if you want to, you can take yourselves off of mute just for one moment and just say hello and say good evening to everyone from wherever you are at, and share your greetings. Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
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 From Houston. Hello.
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 All right, yes, and we even have some folks that even put their cameras on. Thank you for that. This is a billed as a webinar, which usually means you don't usually have to have your camera on. We will invite some interaction this evening, but you can do that via chat. But I'll also invite you guys at some point, if you want to take yourselves off mute, to share a little bit about your experience or any other prompts that I might provide for us. So I want to thank you all for being here. My name is Daniel Libby. I am a clinical psychologist, and I am the founder and executive director of Veterans Yoga Project. And we decided a few nights ago, in light of what I was hearing back from a lot of the veterans that I work with, and just in the greater community, that there's a lot going on and people are stressed out. And for those of us who are dealing with post-traumatic stress, the things can be exacerbated by current events. And for those of us who are taking care of, or who are family members of, or who are friends of those who are suffering from post-traumatic stress, it can leave us in a place that can be similarly difficult, and leave us challenges. And so I decided to just put this webinar together. So thank you guys for being here, because what we're going to do for the next 45 minutes is, and I'll even go to the little slide here that I have. Thank you for bearing with me. All right, these are our basic objectives tonight. Is really, I want to describe to you how we really understand health and healing happens, and how recovery from post-traumatic stress happens, and talk a little bit about the model that we use to really create the space for recovery and for resilience. That's really the entire mission of what Veterans Yoga Project is about. But I'm hopeful also that this will be practically practical, for lack of a better way to say it. And that when you are done this evening, that maybe you have 1 or 2 or 3 new strategies that you can implement right away, just to see if they make a difference, right? And yes, part of that will be, do yoga, right? And breathe and meditate, right? And that's part of what we do as Veterans Yoga Project. But really tonight, I want to really talk more about from, I would consider more of that psychologist perspective, or that understanding of how health and healing really happens. So with all of that, I'm going to take a drink of water here and a deep breath. And I'm going to invite you to also similarly take a deep inhale and exhale. Okay, sorry, I had the keys and my wife was looking for the keys just because she has to go pick up the kid. Sorry for that. Why are you here? So part of the reason I wanted to do this webinar was from a training that we recently did, and it was a woman there who was a veteran herself, and she was also the wife of a veteran, and had suffered numerous casualties, in their units, both during combat and after, when they were home. And she had been friends with a number of folks who had committed suicide. And one of her things was, how do I get them to do yoga, right? How do I get my boyfriend to do yoga? How do I get my husband to do yoga? And it's sort of the wrong question, is what I was thinking in my head. And I think is what I responded to her, because it really, what you're asking to do is to impart your will onto someone else who's already been disempowered, right? You want to tell them what to do. And when we understand what trauma is, we understand that it's a disempowering experience, and that if we aren't coming to the experience with that understanding, we unwittingly are just going to push up against resistance. So as Veterans Yoga Project, we have several programs. We work with yoga teachers, with mental health clinicians, with family members. And part of this course is really, or part of this tonight's webinar is really piece of a greater course that we're doing on mindful resilience for compassion fatigue. But before we even get there, I would love for you guys, if you could just take a moment and put in the chat box, or if you even want to take yourselves off, you can raise your hand. And, you know, we build this as a webinar, right? Creating space for recovery. And so why, what is it that you are doing here? Like, what is it that you are experiencing that you would like to share with us? And so the rest of us, we will start to, and even those of us who are typing in the chat box, right? We can start with one of the 5 tools that we use, which is breathing. And so we can just focus on inhaling and exhaling. And so even as you might be putting something in the chat, right? And you don't have to sit in a special yoga posture. You don't even have to do anything different. You can continue to inhale and exhale and focus on deepening your inhale and exhale very easily while you're doing everything else. And so we'll start to try to integrate that a little bit. And as I'm looking in the chat, learning, people are looking for learning. And that's it. That's all we got is learning. Well, that's good. We'll take learning. Well, I'll tell you what we know about what little research we have in particular since COVID. Is that there are people out there that are asking the questions and trying to understand what are the challenges that our military families are facing. And while it's mostly these were COVID related, you can see how they're just exacerbations of things that were going on before. And again, these studies were both done over a year ago. And how with the latest events happening in Afghanistan and political stuff, that you can understand that you might see more trouble sleeping, right? Overeating, undereating, alcohol, drug abuse, physically, headaches, migraines, anger and impulsive aggressive issues, other physical health problems. Bob Woodruff Foundation poll or their whole research paper really identified there's both economic and employment needs, right? There's needs for social interaction and there's mental health needs. And so you can see why COVID would be something that would exacerbate all of these things. And you can hopefully by the end of this start to see how the tools that we're sharing can address a lot of these issues all at once. And so I'm going to now go and thank you guys for all of these comments in the box here. I want to be responsive to what the community needs are. I'm a yoga instructor hoping to help the military population in my area. I'm a yoga teacher and military spouse and military mom. My son had a serious parachute accident in the Army. My friend recommended 20 years plus of being diagnosed with PTSD caused by military experience, but no help from the VA for dealing with any of it. I find that breathing is helping me and I want to increase my practice and extend it to others. I'm the mom of an Army vet and I'm struggling along with him. I'm a healthcare provider and I serve healthcare providers. PTSD in the ongoing pandemic is becoming prevalent, especially with the most recent wave. The tools and skills I utilize for myself as a veteran during times of stress or strain as well help clients, participants, and patients I serve in the community. As a peer specialist, noticing the things that are coming up for myself and the veterans I work with, I'm here to better myself and those I serve. This is very heartening, right? Right there, you can see there's some themes here, right? I'm here to learn what I can for myself and to be able to share with others in my community, to share with veterans in my community, helping veterans in the area, a retired paramedic, current conference and continuing ed teacher. Found the parallels for the first responder in my VYP training. and keep borrowing from this world and from my work. Strategies to assist my spouse, who is a veteran of the Desert Storm, right? And the situation in Afghanistan has produced many triggers. This is my first VYP event. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so thank you for sharing that with me. I too am someone who works, I'm not a veteran myself, but I work with a lot of veteran families. And the reason that I started VYP is because I care. And that's what I got out of all the messages I just read that you guys shared, is that you care about this community and that you are doing something about it. And unfortunately, when we care and we're doing something about it, sometimes we start to feel the weight of that, right? And we bear the brunt of that caring. And we might feel these same symptoms and experiences that those who with post-traumatic stress are feeling. And that's really the basis of the work that we're doing when we're dealing with compassion fatigue. Well, when we look at what we're going to call the mindful resilience for compassion fatigue model, the good news is that there are smarter people than me that have been studying this for a long time. And they're studying burnout. They've been studying vicarious trauma. They've been studying compassion fatigue. And they've learned what the predictors are of developing there. They learned what it is and what the symptoms are, and some of the strategies for avoiding that compassion fatigue, and instead blossoming with what they call compassion satisfaction. And so based on that research, we took their model and we turned it into, we adapted it a little bit. And if you look at this model, at the very beginning of the model is where we start from. And tonight, all we're going to do is we're going to start in the lower left-hand corner of this model, right, where we talk about your empathy and your concern. And we're going to really understand how that creates the foundation for all of our interactions of those that we're caring for or caring with. Later on, I'll talk to you about it, and we have scholarships. Thanks to our donors and funders, we have scholarships available for our 7-week course, which is a 7-week online, hour-and-a-half a week mindful resilience for compassion fatigue course. So we'll give you more information for that at the end of this. But for tonight, we're going to start here, and just even getting this much, I hope will be helpful for you. But when we start from where our intention is in the work that we do, we have to understand what trauma and stress are. And so when we start to understand healing from trauma and stress, we know one thing, right? One, we know that the body heals itself, right? It's this kind of ugly picture that's kind of faded. I just stole this off the internet today. But if you think about any time you hurt yourself, has anybody ever broke a bone, right? What happens is your bone heals itself, right? We know the body heals itself, right? That's a given, right? And we know that that only happens when you create the conditions for healing to occur, right? You got to put the Band-Aid on it, and, you know, mommy or daddy's got to kiss it, and, you know, we got to keep it clean. And over time, the finger heals itself. Same thing as if you break your arm, you have to reset the bone, and you have to put a cast on your arm, and you have to create the conditions, right? And have, you know, enough nutrition and, you know, be well fed and all that, and your body will heal itself. You create the conditions for that healing to occur. And so what we know also, though, right, is that the mind and the spirit do the same thing. And here's where I could ask for, you know, anybody to raise their hand, either electronically using the little buttons at the bottom of your screen, or just raising your hand. Has anybody here ever had a broken heart? Ever in your life? All right. Right. Lots of people have had a broken heart, right? And did that broken heart heal? Yeah, it healed, right? If it hasn't healed for you yet, I'm sorry, you'll get there, right? If it's a little bit new, I'm sorry, right? But right, the fact is that has anybody ever lost someone close to them and been deeply grieved? Have you ever been so heartbroken because you lost someone, right? And you were grieving, and like was your spirit broken, right? Has your spirit ever been broken, right? Is your mind like, yes. And so we know that the mind and the spirit are just like the body, and that they heal themselves. And that's the supposition that we work from at Veterans Yoga Project and under the Mindful Resilience programs, that we understand that we cannot heal somebody else. We can't try to cure or fix somebody else, because nobody else really needs fixing. The only thing we can do is create the conditions for healing to occur, right? We can be the boot on the broken ankle. We can be the Band-Aid. We can be that supportive presence that allows that person's own natural healing to happen. And this is so very true for something like recovering from post-traumatic stress, right? There isn't a Band-Aid you can, or a pill that you can take, right? This is part of life, right? Trauma is a part of life. And the recovery from post-traumatic stress or from that trauma is a psycho-spiritual, mental, physical thing of growth. And it's more than just, resetting a bone and fixing your arm. And so we start there. We start from the understanding is that our job isn't try to fix or cure anybody, but the body and the mind heal itself, right? But we have to create the conditions for that to occur. So in order to create the conditions for that to occur, we have to step back a little bit and understand a little bit about trauma and stress. And so if we understand all traumatic and stressful events have three things in common, right? Those researchers on the call, right? Maybe don't give it away, but right, we know that there are three things in common for that, just characteristics of all stressful and traumatic events, right? And those are safety, predictability, and control. All stressful and traumatic events, right? There is a lack of safety, predictability, and control, right? So if we use the motor vehicle accident as the most common type of traumatic event to cause post-traumatic stress, we can understand that there's a lack of safety, right? People get hurt all the time and killed in car accidents, right? There's a lack of predictability because I can't really predict what my car is going to do or what somebody else's car is going to do. I can't control my car or the other car. If we understand COVID-19 and why many of us are stressed out and a lot of people are traumatized from all the, subsequent things that are happening besides, potentially losing friends and family members, right? Is that here's an event that is unsafe, right? Is it unsafe? Yes. People are sick and dying, right? Is it unpredictable? Yes. Right. Is it uncontrollable? Yes. Right. You might all of a sudden feel a measure of control and feel a little less anxious if you're wearing a mask, right? I felt better when I got vaccinated, right? There's a level of control that happens, but right, we're still living in this, right, unsafe, unpredictable, uncontrollable experience. And so you can think about your own stressors, right, in your own life and think about how, maybe there was a lack of safety or predictability or control, right, in that event. And you can usually identify all three. But what we also understand about traumatic events is that very often there's a lack of internal safety, predictability, and control, meaning my mind, my body, my breath didn't do what I predicted it would do, didn't do what I trained it to do, and I couldn't control it, and it wasn't safe. So one of the experiences I've had as a therapist is working with a young man who said in not so many words, "Doc, I couldn't predict or control the fact that I projectile vomited the first time I had to pick up a body part." Right. And that sure is, it didn't feel safe. I tried like hell to keep it in. Right. Or somebody who freezes at the time of a stressful event. Right. People were talking to me, but I just froze. Right. I couldn't predict that that's what I was going to do. And I couldn't control it at the time, and it wasn't safe. And so we can understand stressful events, right, as lacking safety, predictability, and control. Right. And for all of us, all the stresses we feel in our lives, right? And you think about the big stressors and you can think about the little stressors, right? And you can think about them in terms of safety, predictability, and control. And this is going to be important when we come back later and we talk about creating space for others. But for now, we're just understanding those stressful and traumatic events. And it's important for us to understand the experience of those who are dealing with post-traumatic stress, right? So for those of us who are have friends, family, or professionally, we care for those who are dealing with post-traumatic stress. We can think about them in terms of symptoms, but instead we can think about their experience. What are they experiencing, They're experiencing an external world that is still unsafe. They're experiencing an external world that is still unpredictable, and they're experiencing an external world that is still uncontrollable. Right? So if I do go out, I'm not going to go out in crowds. If I do, I'm going to keep my back to the wall and keep my eyes on the exits, right? Because I want to have some measure of control, because I can't predict, what's going to happen, who's going to say or do what, right? I don't feel safe. But what's often more debilitating about somebody who's dealing with post-traumatic stress is the lack of internal space, the lack of internal safety, predictability, and control. I can't predict or control when I'm going to have these thoughts and these images and these memories. I can't predict or control when I'm going to get triggered, right? And all of a sudden I'm just going to snap at the person I care about, even though I didn't really mean to. I was just, it's just in that space, right? My body was out of control, right? And so when somebody is dealing with the post-traumatic stress, right, they're dealing with a body, right, that sweats profusely, the heart starts pounding unpredictably, uncontrollably, it doesn't feel safe. The body is an unsafe, unpredictable, uncontrollable place. The mind, right, with the intrusive thoughts and images and obsessiveness and all that, it becomes an unsafe and unpredictable and uncontrollable place. And so my interactions with other people become, right, feel unsafe, they're unpredictable, and I can't control them. And so it's important for us to understand our own experience through this lens, but it's also important for us to understand the experience of those we're caring for, right? And this is what they're experiencing often, right? And especially when they are being triggered, right? They are just experiencing a lack of space. And what we know is that in order for us to take care of ourselves and others, we have to create space. We have to create an internal world that feels a little bit safer, more predictable, and more controllable. And we need to be able to, and the world is not a safe, predictable, controllable place, right? The real world, there's a lot of lack of safety, predictability, and control, but there's also a lot of places of safety, predictability, and control. And it's important to have a sort of a balanced measure of that. And so I'm going to invite everyone listening here just to do me a favor and just take a nice deep inhale through your nose. And then I'm going to predict with 100% accuracy what you're going to do next. Now go ahead and take another deep inhale through the nose. And this time, hold your breath for 3 beats. Control your breath for 3 beats, and then let it out slowly. Control your breath on the exhale so that your exhale is slower and deeper than your inhale. And let's just do that a couple more times, just because. Inhale through the nose. Hold it for a beat, and then just let it out real slow. Let your exhale maybe even be twice as long as your inhale, right? So now all of a sudden your breath has become a little bit more predictable, more controllable. If you do that a few more times, if you make your exhale longer than your inhale, what you'll find is, right, you can do that while you're listening to me too. Right, you'll find is that you'll actually have a shift in your autonomic nervous system, and you'll actually start to feel safer in your body. You'll actually feel better in your body, right? We're actually creating actual space in your body. Now, if I invite you to continue to breathe, but pay attention to the sensations right there at the tips of your nostrils, right? In fact, I'll invite you to bring your attention into your right nostril as you inhale and exhale. And just right at the tip of your right nostril, just take a few inhales and exhales and see if you can keep all of your attention right there at the tip of your right nostril. Now, what most likely happened is you're paying attention to your right nostril, but you're also engaging in like wondering about the right nostril and what are we doing? And maybe you heard a sound and you were distracted. That was a fairly pointed attentional thing. But what you just did there was meditate, right? You were just focusing your mind on a point, right? And that is meditation. And the practice of meditation is really noticing when you get distracted and then bringing your attention back to what you're focusing on. Right. And then getting distracted again and noticing when that happens and bring your attention back. That's what meditation is. Right. And so when we teach meditation, that's all it is you're focusing on your breath But as you're sitting there, your mind is just a monkey mind, right? Your mind is designed to think and wonder. And so it does it. And each time you notice it and bring it back, right, you start to be able to know yourself better, because you start to be able to predict where your mind goes. Your mind becomes more predictable, right? When you engage in mindfulness, all you're really doing is making yourself more predictable. You're starting to know yourself a little better. Where does my mind go, right? It's funny. Every time I try to meditate after lunch, I think about cookies. What is that about, right? I start to know myself better. And over time is when you learn meditation, is you can actually focus on your breath for 2 breath cycles before you start getting distracted, thinking about cookies, and bring your mind back. And then with practice, now I can focus on my breath for 3 breath cycles or 4 breath cycles or 5 breath cycles. And so what happens is the mind becomes more predictable and it becomes more controllable, right? And now your mind is an asset that you can use and deploy in your day-to-day life, instead of the thing that drags you from impulse to urge to feeling and drags you all around. Right now, your mind is your asset, right? So in this way, the mind just became more predictable, more controllable, more safe, right? So now we've done this with the breath, we've done this with the mind. And when we engage in these practices, we do the same thing with the body, right? We start to move the body, we bring our attention into the body, we start to know what it feels like in our body, right? If I invite you guys to just notice the sensations in the bottoms of your feet right now, right? Maybe even just press your big toes down if you can, and just feel that, right? Big deal, right? I feel my big toe, right? Over time and with repetition, right, you start to be able to sense your body in a more refined way, right? You start to be able to move your body in a more refined way as you start to engage in the mindful movement practices of yoga, right? Which you're actually safer, right? You learn, balance better. You learn, which results in fewer falls as we age, right? We start to be able to notice, and when we start to notice our body, we start to eat better and we start to take care of it more, right? And so with the physical practice, the body becomes more predictable. We know it, right? We know how to move it more in better ways, in different ways, in different ranges of motion. And it becomes more controllable, and therefore more safe. And so ultimately, this is what yoga is. It's just it's a system, a self-mastery system, right, that has been developed over time, that allows us to have safety, predictability, and control in a world that isn't always safe and predictable and controllable. And the ability for us to learn these tools and to utilize these tools depends in part on the external world, right? So what I just talked about was making the internal space safe, predictable, controllable. But what about my relationship to the external world, right? And now for those of you who are taking care of somebody who is dealing with post-traumatic stress, right? This is talking to you a little bit more, right? Is how do we create an external experience for those around us, right, who are dealing with post-traumatic stress? How do we create an external experience that for them allows them to feel safer, more predictable, and more controllable, right? Because that's actually going to open up the pathway for healing. That's going to allow them to be in the moment. That's going to allow them to interact with you in different ways. And that's what's going to allow them to actually start to practice the tools of yoga, right? And we're still not going to push them into be yoga evangelists, right? But the point is that what we do in Veterans Yoga Project as yoga teachers, right? What I invite therapists to do is to create a experience, whether you're teaching a yoga class, whether you're a therapist, doing a therapy session in your office, whether you are a spouse of someone who's dealing with post-traumatic stress, whether you're a mom or a friend of somebody who's recovering from post-traumatic stress, we can be very supportive. We can be helpful. We can have a very significant impact, right, on our loved one's experience. And in my experience, the way to do that is not to, sort of bang your head up against the wall, trying to get them to do yoga or trying to get them to do anything. It's really simply to create a safe, predictable, controllable environment that allows them to do what they have to do to heal, right? You don't know what they have to do to heal. You have no idea, right? You have no idea what any other person has, and they don't even know, right? Instead, you create the conditions for that to happen, and you give people tools and support and love and allow that to happen. And so, so how do we do that, right? How do we create that safe, predictable, controllable environment? And this is where, and I'm just going to be reminded of the time here. I think we're right on target here. As a yoga teacher, let's say as a therapist, right? If I have an office and I'm doing therapy with someone, I am going to set my office up in a way that allows that person to feel safe and feel in control, right? So in other words, I'm not going to keep my patients back to the door, right? Because they're going to be sitting there, doing therapy with me or talking to me, and they're not going to feel so comfortable because their back is to the door, right? Because part of their consciousness isn't going to be paying attention to me. Part of their consciousness is alert to hear, because they're ready for that door, that little jiggle of the door. They're ready to respond, right? And so if I set my office up in a way where somebody can have a view of the door and not have that behind them, right, they're going to be able to be in session with me a little bit more easily, right? They're not going to be as distracted, right? They're going to be able to actually be here with me. And we do the same thing when we're setting up a yoga class, right? We'll set up the room in a way where, you don't have people behind you, or you don't, have people's backs to doors. You're going to let people know what distractions are going to happen. Right. And by the way, in our very sort of humble therapy office here, we share this with a lot of other offices, and the bathroom's right out the door, and it's kind of loud in here. So as we're talking, you're going to hear, that door close back and forth a bunch. So, just to let you know that's going to happen. Right. So now when that happens, I already know that what it is. You gave me some predictability. It still might startle me a little bit, but now I can still stay with you and talk to you, because now I'm not wondering what that is. You already told me beforehand, right? So in this, in another way, I've given you predictability, right? So there are ways that we can set up predictability. We can set up a sense of safety, and we can set up control. We can give people options. And by doing that, we're creating those conditions for healing to occur. So I'll even take this a little bit out of sort of necessarily even the trauma space, right? And I have two examples I'm going to give here, and then I'm going to ask you guys to share with me some examples that you have. So for me, two things that come to mind. One is, I don't know if you guys, if you're at home, if you live with someone else that you care about, a family member, and you're expecting them to come home at work at 6 o'clock, and what happens when they're running late? Right. And if you don't know they're running late, right, what do? You start to wonder, right? And especially all of a sudden, I just heard a siren outside. Now, the first thing my mind does is I can't help it, right? I'm automatically playing this scenario out. Oh, where could that be? Could they, and I'm worrying about what they're at, right? Which is going to increase my stress level. It's not going to allow me to sort of be, the best me. But if, my wife tells me, right, oh, by the way, I'm going here after work, and so I'm going to be late by a few minutes. Or, hey, right, I'm stuck in traffic, or, traffic's especially bad tonight and whatever, so I'm going to be home late. Right now, I don't have to worry, right? And so in that way, I feel a little bit more at ease. Another place where predictability is very, very helpful in my life is when it's time for my daughter to get off of the iPad, or it's time for us to leave the playground, right? If I give her a 10-minute warning, hey, 10 more minutes, right? Then in 10 minutes, it's like, oh man, come on, can I have one more minute? Okay. But if I just said, okay, no, time to turn the iPad off without that 10-minute warning, right? I get a monster. And so these are, right? These are two examples that I have that, right? Ways, and if you think about this, all it is communication, right? It's just ways for us to communicate with others, right? It's really about being super courteous towards those that, care about us. And so I am going to invite you guys just to maybe take a few breaths and think about your own life, and to provide some other examples. And again, you can do that either in the chat box, or if you want to raise your electronic or real hand. But we'll just take a few moments here and try to think about, where is it that you either notice a lack of safety, predictability, and control in your own stressful experience. Maybe you notice how someone else in your life provides you safety, predictability, and control and actually helps you feel better. Or again, if you're a caregiver of someone who's dealing with post-traumatic stress, right? If the idea is like, try to imagine them when they're at their worst, right? Or when they're in an episode, or when you're the loved one that you love is dealing with a trigger. Imagine what they're feeling. They're feeling a lack of safety and a lack of predictability and a lack of control. That's what they're experiencing right now, right? That's what they're feeling. They're feeling like they just don't feel safe. They don't know, they can't predict their own body. They can't predict their own mind and what it's going to do. They can't predict what you're going to do with the external world, right? Everything feels out of control. What can you do, right? What is it that you can do either first thing in the morning, right? What is you can do when that person is experiencing that experience, right? In that moment, that you can let them know that they are supported, right? That they are safe. What can you do to allow them to experience a little bit of predictability or control? And take a moment just to think about one experience in your life, right? Or one way that you're thinking like, well, maybe this, right? Maybe I can help her by doing this because I know this will make her feel safe, or, I can give her a choice about this, right? Another example, like in a less stressful way, right? For me is maybe you have this with your significant other, especially if we ever decide we want to go out. Oh, what should we have? Right? I don't know, whatever you want to have, right? Or I don't know, you decide, or I don't know, you decide, right? But if somebody gives me three choices, okay, we can do Italian or Chinese or burgers, right? Now I have a choice, I have control, right? And so that gives me a little bit more control. It doesn't give me that anxiety, right? So sometimes providing structure is giving people control. Oh, I love that. In social events, letting my spouse know who may be attending. I love that. I love going through with my wife and like, who's going to be here and wait, how are they related to you and who's what? And right, that's gives me predictability. That's great. I announce on Alexa when I'm arriving home so that the garage door doesn't scare my husband. Nice. All right. Right. So now we have technology that can help us with this. That's very cool. Recognizing that my partner may be having a tough morning, I share, hey, don't worry, take a few minutes, I got you. I see him and he doesn't feel so pressured. I love that, right? We all just want to be seen and heard and held, right? I got you, right? That is that's the best thing you can tell anybody, right? I got you. Nice. When the weather is good, I try to get my loved ones, students, to get outside and enjoy nature. Early in the morning when it's lovely out, I do as many classes as I can outside, Tai Chi outside. Very nice, right? That nature provides that sense of safety. Absolutely. Like that's just like an intrinsic part of who we are. Predictability in healthcare would be if admin would tell us how much PPE we currently have. We are afraid of, sorry, I don't mean to giggle. I don't know why I find that funny. I apologize. But something that would add predictability in healthcare is if admin would tell us how much PPE we currently have, we are afraid we are going to run out again, right? Like that is a serious like lack of predictability within organizations, right? So it's not even just individuals or working with somebody dealing with trauma or working in your family, right? But safety, predictability, and control is something that is important to help organizations run. It's an important part of leadership. Petting the cats during the petting the cats during work day to slow down, to breathe. I can move out of my workspace. Very nice. I bring our dog to visit the sun, right? The dog gives you comfort, right? Totally makes you feel safe, right? That's what a good dog does. We ask everyone before we hug or touch anyone else every time. Nice. Is it okay? Can I come in for a hug? Very nice, right? Giving people that level of control. Nice thing to teach kids at a young age too. So there are a lot of ways that we can start to provide a safe, predictable, controllable environment. And that's really just the first step, right? But it's a powerful step. I worked with a mom and her son who had just come back from, I think, Iraq, and they'd be watching TV at home and watching Netflix or whatever. And she would get up and he would be like, "Where are you going?" And like, he would do this several times. And she just got sick of it. She's like, "Why are you sweating me? Like, I'm just getting up to get some water. Leave me alone. I'll get up if I want to get up. This is my house." Rah, 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 rah. Right. But really, it just turned out that it was just sort of a startle response. Like, "Hey, where are you going?" Right. And when she switched and started giving a little predictability and said, "Hey, I'm going to get up and get some water. Can I get you anything?" Right. It just changed the whole experience. And now they're not having all this whole tug of war, right? Because she's thinking a little bit about that predictability. And so I'll invite you to do that, right? To think about, right? When I do Zoom classes, I let folks know in advance that my dog may bark, right? Giving people, right? If you're teaching something over Zoom, let them know if you're going to have a distraction, if someone might, walk into the room. So thank you for that, Perry. So I'll invite you to do that, is to, as we're trying to support those who are recovering from stress, especially those who are in acute stress response, what can you do in the moment, right? And the best thing for the moment really is just personal connection, seeing that person, right? Being a listening ear, right? Being, loving a person, right? There's no better sense of a way to help somebody through, but also being that one who's also paying attention to, hey, this is what's going to happen. We're going to do this, this, and this next. Or, hey, do you want to do this or this? Or we can do it this way or this way. And just giving that level of control and predictability can just shift the whole thing. And so that is, we did that. We made a little bit of a list. There are a lot of challenges to holding space, and that's why you got to practice. That's why you got to do the practice. And we have lots of tools for you to practice. You can go to either one of those links, follow us on social media, but go to veteransyogaproject.org. We have 3.5 hours of live practice every day, right? We have little 15-minute breathing practices, little 30-minute breathing, movement practices, meditation practices. So go to our website. You can register for the online yoga studio. All of those are brought to you at no cost, thanks to our generous donors and supporters. And these are the tools that we teach: breathing, meditation, mindful movement, guided rest, and gratitude. And once again, I think Alex is going to put into the chat box a direct link to the Mindful Resilience for Compassion Fatigue program. And again, in light of what's just happened, we have supporters and grantors, and we have, I think we're down to maybe 10 or 15 slots left in several classes of Mindful Resilience for Compassion Fatigue that start next month. They start the week of September 14, 15, 16, 7 weeks for an hour and a half each day or night, depending on what course you're in. And it's just a chance for 18 people per cohort. And it's just to start to work through this whole model of Mindful Resilience for Compassion Fatigue, and how do we practice some of the tools that we, breathing, meditation, movement, rest, and gratitude. And how do we understand burnout? Let's learn about the difference between vicarious trauma and burnout, and what are the tools and understandings that we can put in place so that the work that we do gives us compassion satisfaction instead of compassion fatigue. So go to the link that's in there, and if you hit the little scholarship button, you'll go through the process and hopefully get some benefit from it. That is us. Again, thank you guys so much for being here. This is brought to you by Veterans Yoga Project, the awesome nonprofit that is here to support recovery and resilience among our veterans, families, and communities. And we have lots of programs and how we do that. And so I invite you to go to the website and see how you can get involved or how you can benefit from our programs. And feel free to reach out to me directly. There is my email, our website. Look us up on social media. I did not bad, 50 minutes. And so we have some time now, and I'm happy just to start to engage in some discussion. If anybody has any particular questions, I'm happy to answer those. I see 11 new messages in the chat. So there's the scholarship application. Thank you, Alexandra, for putting that in there. And we are staying late, like Alex said. Thank you, you're so welcome. Thank you, you're so welcome. You are so awesome. And woohoo to you. And let us know. We can do more of these. We can do a part 2, but really consider trying to sign up for one of those 7-week programs. Their work, you have to do the work, but we've seen really positive transformation from the participants who go through and complete it. So that's all we got. Thank you all for being here. If you'd like to, again, I'm here. Oh, there's more things in the chat. Let me make sure there's not questions. Will this presentation be available to send to others? Yes, I believe we are recording this presentation and we will make it available. Thank you. I'm glad you have some new ideas. I hope, Tom, that you also get more involved there in New Jersey. Excellent. All right, well, please feel free to reach out if there's anything that I can do to help you support our veterans, families, and communities, or if there's anything else that you want to harass me about, or you can spam me, or no, don't do that. But do feel free to reach out if I can be of assistance. Other than that, that's all we got. If you're leaving, feel free to take yourself off of mute and say goodbye.
Thank you, Dan. I'll harass you later. It's Tammy.
I look forward to it.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Kim, I got your message. It's just a little lengthy, so give me just a moment to read through it, please, okay?
Some more stuff here. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you and thank you. Thank you, Sam. Have a good night. You can stop
Okay.
recording now.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad I remembered that.